we're live.
Hello!
Hello!
Hello, all welcome. It is, what day is it?
Monday.
Monday. You know what? It was daylight savings, so I'm a little screwed up. It is Monday afternoon, generational change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and you see that, oh, right there. You got your opportunity.
See, no, I do it better. I can do like the
there you
Blake
go.
Shelton.
There you go. If you want to contribute to Jen's 2024 campaign, obviously, we are extremely appreciative of everybody who helps. Teresa,
Yeah.
very much appreciated. I didn't watch the Oscars, and I have absolutely no.
I didn't watch the Oscars,
but
either.
I give a shout out to Mr. Glazer, and I think one of the gentlemen who made mention of what's going on in Gaza right now, which obviously is.
I did see pictures, and I'm sad about Emma Stone's dress. I am. I'm sad about Emma Stone's dress. And for whatever reason, and I love her so, and I actually loved that movie. I did see the movie Poor Things. She was amazing. Double K.
Love you.
And I love her. And to me, like, she's so pretty. And the dress, I saw the picture. I'm so sad about it. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's as negative as I will be. I'm not going to be mean, but it just, she could do so much better.
So we basically had to make, there was a desire to get this campaign off the ground once things were officially declared, rather than just wait to have all our ducks in a row, which is understandable. Everybody wants to do things in
there's a strategy
fashion and all that. But Teresa, as you requested, guys, if you would like to contribute to Jen's congressional campaign against Debbie Wasserman Schultz,
this is the thing.
To do two things. You got the gen2024.org, but this is the.
Stop it.
I am not touching you. So you can go.
Yeah, that's to the campaign. And it is totally separate. It is totally separate. So generational change, like if you're overseas.
Like Travers, for example, if Travers, you want to contribute, but you can't contribute to the campaign because you're in the UK, you would be able to go to patreon.com.
Correct. And you can help us, because the truth is, when we're having help with the channel, it still helps us promote us, because it's still the channel. So the channel is allowed to take money from anywhere, but our campaign can only take money from people in this country. So
that's where you can go if you would like to contribute. And again, why would you contribute if it isn't going directly to the campaign? Well, we have a producer and we have a content creator. And so we want to be able to make sure that they are justly compensated.
And they're not, guys. Like, they get,
do the best
honestly,
we don't get any money.
No. So it's like, literally, I'm trying to maintain, like, stay over like $100 in our little bank account. And so I wait for the money to come in, and then I send it out as soon as it comes in to the people. And I would, honestly, they should be making more money. Oh. And the truth is, they're doing it because they like what we're doing, and they're helping us, and it's amazing. But
transforming politics into service. But
yeah, I mean, if more money came into here, then I could actually pay them more. Which, I mean, let me just say, like, for somebody, like, I feel it's almost hypocritical, like, because I'm such like a fierce advocate for labor, but like, there's no way our people are making minimum wage.
Yeah, figure out how to survive.
It's from all the love in our heart and the fact that they're committed to our mission. But it's just, so whatever you guys contribute really helps the mission in general.
Well, we appreciate it, Travers, and anybody who wants.
Oh, Travers, he's just using an example of somebody overseas. You support plenty by being here.
Yes, contributing to that algorithm, doing all those things that we ask you to do. One of the things that you've experienced since you started doing this is figuring out a way where just being you is the best possible policy, because
fascinating.
It allows you to, as you say, cross-pollinate with a lot of different people in a lot of different political circles.
You say that as if I have any other option.
Well,
it's like, just be you. I swear there is just no, I wouldn't know how else to be.
Before we bring in Ryan, I would just ask you to do.
This is why people get neck lifts.
Why?
Because look at that. I'm like getting a turkey.
I don't know
neck,
what you're looking at.
For Christ's sake. Jesus.
I think you're,
all right.
Geez, for somebody
I'm
that
just
really overreacting.
I don't
so.
Think so.
Before we bring Ryan in, please give everybody a debrief of the event that we went to yesterday, what it was all about, and why it's important.
Okay, so the Palestinian and Muslim community down here in South Florida. When I say South Florida, I'm talking Tri-County. So West Palm through Miami-Dade, had a very impromptu, apparently they only put it together over a few days, a fundraiser at a local restaurant that is a Palestinian restaurant. And they had I'm never going to name the food. I'll just sound retarded trying to say it. Oh, that's even worse. I'm like, now I'm in a shit show. Yeah. No, seriously.
Now they're going to clip you for using that word. Bad person.
Bad person. Yeah. No, but it was a food competition, like a chili cook-off or a I don't know what it was. What was that? What was it? Moogla Dew?
Yeah. Well, based on anybody
I don't
that
know.
has,
and it had meat. So I wasn't going to eat it. I was like in my big fat Palestinian wedding yesterday. It was the coolest thing ever. These ladies
people were nice enough to.
Oh my God, they were amazing. They were amazing. Oh, I know, but no, this was the best. So I'm talking to this lady and I'm telling her, I'm like, I'm so appreciative. So then she's trying to feed me and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't eat meat. And she's like, I'll get you chicken. And I turned to this woman next to me who was a lot more secular seeming to me. And I said, I'm in my big fat Palestinian wedding. It was so funny. But no, they did get me vegetarian food. So there was a fundraiser yesterday at Olivo Mediterranean Restaurant. It's on Sunrise Boulevard. It's really good. Highly recommend. And they were the warmest, kindest people. So I just got to meet people that are all really suffering right now. I don't think there was a single person there that was Palestinian that didn't have a connection to somebody in Gaza that's been killed. That's what I think.
But don't worry, they're going to go into Rafah and they're going to take care of Hamas because that's what's going to happen, and the civilians be damned. But as I was saying, it does go without saying that your ability to connect with people across all different layers of the political spectrum, I think, is very important. And I think a lot more people agree with where you're coming from on a multitude of issues. The tribalism is it's so passé at this point. And it pays to have allies in the area that may not completely agree on every issue, which is okay, but sharing a similar mission in terms of reason, passion, and justice as you fight for.
I do. I try.
I think is important.
I try.
And so we are very pleased to bring on somebody who is a friend of a friend. That's how we met, right?
A friend of a friend.
Yes, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Our friend Luke.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Anarchist himself brought a bunch of us together in Miami. Well, no, Fort Lauderdale. It wasn't even Miami.
I just don't with labels. That's part of the problem. Like, why do we have to have labels?
He is the host of CannCon.
Which stands for Cannabis Conservative.
Already your friend.
Well, I mean, this is why we can cross-pollinate.
Amen to that. Brian Lupo, welcome to Generational Change. Ryan. I said Ryan.
You did.
No, Brian with a B. Brian with a B.
Why did I think your name was Ryan? That's so maybe because I didn't hear it that when we were sitting at that place.
Ryan,
It was pretty loud. It was a lot of fun though. I had a really good time.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. I like your studio setup.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm spending way too much time in here.
So I want to just preface this for people, like, just to know, like, where I am, like, how I say I'm fluid on stuff. When I met Brian, he was wearing a t-shirt that was a flag made out of assault rifles. And I just want to be like clear on this now. And while you guys know, I myself am not a firearm owner, it's not my thing. That did not negate the conversation. See, I was able to speak with him and have a conversation. See that? It's fascinating, right?
Yeah, it was really interesting because the first time when you ran in 2022?
Yeah.
2022.
No,
2020. That's right. You were actually in my district. You're no longer. I'm just north of you now.
I know.
But we dealt with Debbie Wasserman Schultz down here for so long, and she's just everywhere she goes, she's wildly disliked. I can't understand it for the life of me. I chair up a veteran nonprofit down here in Broward, and she'd come out and speak at veteran events, and they have the most disdain for that woman that you'll ever see. And I just wonder how she gets elected over and over again down here in Broward. But the Tim Canova race in 2020 told me a lot. I'm a little bit of an election.
2018 and 2016.
2018. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, well, because this is why. Because people like you wouldn't get to vote for somebody like me because we have closed primaries. So what happens is you have 14% voter turnout in a primary. And of that 14%, I don't know, less than half of them are voting in the Democratic primary. So then you have how few people is it that it really takes to elect her. So when people say, how does that happen? That's how it happens, because people like you can't vote for people like me.
Yeah, and
we're kept apart by politics.
And the conservatives not going to win in Broward County, unfortunately. I don't think we have the numbers, nor do we have the system in place. I was talking about Canova in 2018 and what they did to him. The guy just wanted to double check on the election and make sure everything was on the up and up. And so, he did a Freedom of Information request for ballot images, the ballots themselves, all this chain of custody documentation and all that. And, of course, the county fought him all the way, through the courts. Canova won. He won. And then they turned around and deleted it anyways and said, oops, sorry, nothing to see here. And, that's similar to what Hillary did with the emails and the bleach bit. You mean wipe them with like a cloth? It's very similar to what she did. It's very similar to a lot of the stuff we saw from the 2020 election. That's something I've been dug into for a long time now. And we get the same thing over and over again. Sorry, we deleted those. But you're mandated by law to keep them. And when a court says that you have to turn it over, like in the Canova case, and they don't do it, I mean, you got to be held accountable for that. How do we have accountability and transparency in our elections if we're not even allowed to look at them after a court order?
Well, there was an investigation into that, and people can check that out for themselves. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami was investigating, I believe, the 16 and the 18, or it might have just been the 6. Yeah, it must have just been the 16, because it didn't end up going anywhere because something just happened to the U.S. Attorney in Miami that was looking into that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
You told me this story. I didn't know this story.
But yeah, I'm not going to get into it. But I mean, so that's where the accountability would have been. And then now it's just, nah.
I think at the end of the day, most people are coming to terms with the fact that the system is finally revealing itself in a way that they want to try to put back in the box, and they can't do it. Elections have consequences, as the saying goes. But for the most part, it has to do with career opportunity, money, power. All these things come into play. And I do blame the suburban liberal the most for thinking that everything is above board, that everyone plays by the rules, that there isn't those that have ulterior motives, and they certainly don't feel that way about their team. The one thing that we do respect about the GOP side is that even if we don't agree on a number of policies, there is real infighting within the party. In terms of control for the future, the libertarian movement is growing leaps and bounds all the time, particularly when it comes to civil liberties and the war, anti-war movement. And that's very real. And that's why somebody like Victoria Nuland is in the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party as it stands today. And a lot of that I do think is going to evolve over time. But in terms of trust in the electoral process, once that's broken, you can't get it back. And that really started with the 2016 primary with Bernie Sanders. And there has never been real retribution for what they were doing. And that covers Hillary got more votes. I mean, look, I can tell you I was involved with that campaign, and they did layer upon layer upon layer. It's not just Donna Brazile giving Hillary Clinton one of the debate questions. It's so many things. It's a systemic thing that I just don't think the average person can really wrap their head around. And frankly, they don't really want to, because trying to see things with the red pill is too scary for a lot of people, at least from where I stand.
Well, and the mainstream media is equally as complicit in that, because they're the ones that essentially are the responsible for disseminating that narrative down. When Chris Krebs came out in the 2020 election and said most secure election in U.S. history, and then we had a gentleman the other day, a couple weeks ago, that through FOIA, through Freedom of Information request, obtained a document from CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is Krebs' agency, that was explicitly outlining a year's worth from November 3rd, 2019 through November 3rd, 2020, where CISA was tracking all of the malware and all of the issues that were occurring within our election infrastructure, which Obama declared critical infrastructure before he left office in 2017. So now it's monitored by the Department of Homeland Security, which, oh, by the way, does it for free using a nonprofit called the Center for Internet Security, which, oh, by the way, also props up the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing Analysis Center, which is the ones that were censoring everybody in 2020. This is a whole massive conglomerate. And until it's taken down, it's not going to benefit anybody that's a populist left or populist right candidate or constituent. So somebody like you, it's very difficult to break through a system, even when you have the local support. You can go out and knock on all the doors you want, and people will be, just gung-ho for you and think you have the best campaign. And I talk to you. If you were on the ballot in the general election, if you're on the ballot in 2024, I will vote for you, because I know that a conservative here in Broward will not win. I can't stand the Republican Party, but a conservative will not win. And so having a discussion with you and seeing how you felt about, polling your constituents and listening to your constituents, and even going as far as to vote against something that you might personally believe because it's what your constituents, desire, that means a lot. And you'll never get past that with the current system that we have in place.
Yeah. I mean, and the truth is, and the person who is running in the GOP in my district, his name is Chris Eddy, and he's a really nice guy. He's a nice guy. I've met him. He's, I have no ill will. I mean, he's very nice. So, but yeah, how the numbers are. The numbers are the numbers. I mean, and it is like, they know that. I think they always sort of stay hopeful. And, I'm friendly with a lot of the people that are in that. We have a mayor friend who is friends with Chris Eddy. And and I'm supportive, but the numbers are never going to be there.
Yeah, but you see that happen a lot in the grifting component. And obviously, you being a content creator, I'm sure you see this a lot. You will see, and the grifting component takes place in both political parties. So what they'll end up doing is, like, they'll want to get, let's say for, on the GOP side, they want to get Maxine Waters out of Los Angeles, or on the Democratic side, they want to get Lauren Boebert out, but Marjorie Taylor Greene would be a better example.
Well, they did. I was about to say they did get Boebert out.
Yeah, Boebert's in a competitive district, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is not. And so you'll get several of these candidates that are clearly doing this just to get paid. And the party infrastructure will pump them up so much within the loyalists within the party support system that will give money to these campaigns that have absolutely no chance of winning whatsoever. And yet all the while, people are getting paid, and it's a reflection of why the system is what it is. It's just kind of surprising to me that, and especially for yourself, being a veteran and looking at what we went through in Iraq, and the fact that people are still so easily manipulated, that they can fall for things so easily. It is tough being in the awakened, I don't, instead of saying woke, I say the awakened world, or the awoken world, where you are aware of what's going on. And then being able to have that conversation with somebody who either doesn't see it or refuses to see it can be very frustrating.
Well, I think we need to put our own personal partisanship aside here, because we're at a point now in this country where we have a foundational, fundamental reconstruction that needs to occur within our own politics, especially at the federal level. Because Congress right now clearly is not listening to us. When you look at funding for Ukraine, as an example here, and overwhelmingly, over 60% of Americans that are polled do not want to send any more money to Ukraine, and yet that's the only thing that Joe Biden, that Chuck Schumer, that Mitch McConnell, that Lindsey Graham, that's the only thing that these establishment swamp creatures, and I don't even like to use Democrat versus Republican that much anymore. I'll use left versus right, conservative versus liberal. But to be honest with you, it's moved well beyond that. There's Republicans that I would never, ever in a million years vote for, even if I lived in their state. Graham being one of them, McConnell being another one of them.
Lindsey Graham.
Or who? Yeah.
We've done like a little poll. Is he more Porky Pig or Elmer Fudd? They think Porky Pig.
Brian, what do you attribute the movement in the libertarian conservative movement when it comes to actually forcing the hand of, let's say, the GOP when it comes to, let's say, funding Ukraine? And it looks like there's at least some decent momentum with funding in Gaza. So what do you attribute that type of momentum on your side for, because the Democrats just completely fall in line. They do not challenge the president. They do not challenge the infrastructure. And it's obviously very sad to see.
It's Donald Trump. I mean, I know your audience might not like to hear it. It's Donald Trump.
Some of our audience is fine with that. We have a very good mix here, actually. And that's, look, we are not Trump supporters. That's not, our thing. But to me, at this point, they're all working for the same corporation. So if you're supporting the military industrial complex and you're supporting empire and you're supporting subjugation of people, then you're all kind of working for the same person. The fact that the Democrats are nicer on LGBTQ and they say women's reproductive rights, although I question that, they've had ample opportunity to secure that and failed to do so. They like it as a fundraising tool. So really, what is the difference? Like, the only difference between a neoliberal and a neocon is LGBTQ rights. Like, that's what it seems like to me. And they're all in favor of war.
Gun rights, it's there too.
Okay, so I'm a leftist, like happy to be a leftist, and I'm very civil libertarian. Everyone knows that about me. Like, I am very much about the government's job is to protect our rights, not to patrol us and create more bans or infringements. Like, their job is to protect our rights, not tell us what they are. So yeah, and some people do not like that about me, Brian. They just don't.
I mean, look, I think if everybody was a libertarian, there is a role for the government, but it is way too big now, which is making people, it's like Elon Musk said. Elon Musk said, I'm still a Democrat. It's just I'm right here and the party just continues to move this way. And, now it's put him in the center, actually center right now, if you actually look at what Elon's been talking about lately. And that's the thing is the establishment is just going so far in either direction that it's pulling people one way or the other. And like we were talking about last weekend, why do we have to put ourselves into a category based on a handful of things? These are what they call the kitchen table topics: abortion, gun rights, the LGBTQ stuff. When in reality, the U.S. Congress should not have too much influence on any of those things. That should be mainly your local politics, your local government, local officials. But again, our local politics is so corrupt because when you go to vote and people see the Biden and Trump commercials for a year leading up to it, they'll see, down where we're at, they'll see your commercials in Wasserman Schultz, but they won't see, I want to go down Fort Lauderdale Beach and just ask people, hey, did you vote in the 2020 presidential election? Yes, I did. Who is your state representative? Oh, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. No. Who's your state representative?
They have no idea.
They have no idea.
Nope.
But they vote for the person with a D next to their name or the person with an R next to their name. And if you're going to run in a place like Broward County, and I'm going to flip the role here from a rhino to a dino. If you run in a place like Broward County and you're a Republican, you can't run as a Republican. You have zero shot at winning in the state legislature. So what do? You run as a Democrat, maybe? I don't know. A libertarian? I don't know. But you don't even, just run a campaign against your opponent. You don't even have to focus on your own stuff. And if you can get enough people to facial recognition, name recognition, that kind of thing, and put a D next to your name, you'll win. And the same thing.
And nobody looks at policy. You're right. They don't look. They don't bother to research. They just vote for whoever their team tells them to vote for. And I've said it many times. Like, I like the idea of no parties.
Yes, I love that.
Just no parties. Why do we need parties? And granted, given the current situation, the best we can hope for is multiple parties and ranked choice voting, which we are very big proponents of. Did we talk at all about ranked choice voting? Because what are your it is statistically, numerically, the best system to represent the most amount of people, like the way it mathematically works out. So that's why I like it. Your thoughts?
So ranked choice voting is going to be the downfall of our society. You're taking.
You think that?
Well, for a couple of reasons. For one, we'd have to have a podcast if you were going to understand why ranked choice is such why it'll be the demise of our society, and just reassure the establishment never leaves power. We'd have to have a thorough, in-depth conversation about elections. And I will bring all the receipts. If you ever want to have this conversation, I'm more than happy to do it. Yeah. Our elections are ridiculously compromised. The story just came out yesterday. I mean, we the certain voting company that I don't want to say on this platform because I know you guys are on the commie platform. Certain voting company has all their programmers are in Serbia. And this came out, the email, I have the emails that, they're in a filing up in Michigan in a case that's going on in Michigan. And, the emails were, this part of discovery. And it's in there in the emails that the programming team is upset because, they're being doxxed because this was back in 2020 when it got exposed that how can we have something that is critical U.S. infrastructure programmed by Serbians? I mean, anybody in another country, nobody should be programming.
How do we have a Congress that's been taken over by AIPAC?
100%. I'm with you.
Right. It's the same. Right. I'm just saying, like, I just don't ever want to point out any one nationality kind of thing. Like, it could be any country, right? Like, it could be anybody.
I agree. But this is actually Serbians. That's the only reason I'm pointing out Serbians here, because it's specific to them. I mean, you have the issue with Smartmatic in Venezuela. That's, been covered ad nauseum. And by the way, the mainstream media told us all that was not true, that's all false. And it's absolutely not false. It is true. So
explain how it affects, so what you're saying is because the whole electoral process is just such a mess in terms of like we're so compromised that even if you have a system like ranked choice voting, it doesn't really matter.
Well, the problem with it is, first off, ranked choice voting will ensure that no matter what, you're married to the machines. And you're going to need the machines in order to do the calculation.
I see what you're saying. Like the mechanics of it requires things to be done by machine.
Correct.
Okay. So you don't think because obviously, I mean, I'm a big fan of hand counted paper ballots. So why could that not be done with hand counted paper ballots?
Because there's a lot of math behind it. Certain votes are weighted, your first vote versus your second vote. If you go all the way down to a third choice, depending on, what type of, how far you go with the ranked choice voting. I haven't seen, is there legislation in Florida for ranked choice voting? I sure hope not.
Good God, I'm sure we'll be trust me, you're safe. We'll be the last bastion of ranked choice voting here.
Well, so here's my theory, and I've been kind of pushing this around a little bit here, and I think it's really not complicated to clean up our elections. And I think we were talking about this last weekend, but we should separate our elections. Our federal, state, and local elections should be on completely separate days. They don't have to be in the same month. I mean, the only one that's mandated is our federal elections have to be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. That's federal law.
Right. Everything else is flexible.
And here's the thing is when you vote, if you vote for a federal election and it's on a separate day from the others, there's only a maximum of 3 votes that you could cast: president, Congress, and your Senate. And it's only, one Senate every 6 years.
Right. So really every 2 years you're voting for your rep, and and then every 4 years you're voting for so I would be totally open to that idea. And then the state and municipals would be whenever.
You can, and so the key to that is that you can hand count, hand mark paper ballots on those 3 races. You could do it in a couple hours. And if we bring precincts down to 2,000 man or woman, 2,000 people precincts, got to be fair, right? Got to be fair.
Oh yeah. Fair.
2,000 people maximum per precinct, live stream the counts. Okay. There's no identifying marks on the ballots. So you can live stream the counts so that people can go back and check on their own precincts. And we have a group of people across the United States. And by group, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people that are involved after what happened in 2016 and 2020. They want to get involved in elections. And so then the fallout from that is that on your state and local elections, you won't get the same number of voters, but you'll get more qualified voters. You'll get people who are educated. This notion that every single person needs to vote is absurd. I always think that's the most absurd thing. If you want to go out and educate yourself on how to vote, educate yourself on the candidates, what they stand for, all that stuff, then go for it. But if you're just going to go in there and be like, oh, I saw a Joe Biden commercial, I like Biden, he's got a D next to his name, let me mark D down ballot, you're screwing your community. And it happens. It happens more on the Republican side.
I just was like, that is so true. And people do not realize it. And one of the things I've always said, the only thing worse than voter complacency is voter ignorance. And it is absolutely true. And while we do have low turnout, and everybody's always, especially the Democrats, we got to get out the vote. We got to get out the vote. We got to get, because they're just looking for somebody to vote for the D.
I can remember back in 2020. Do you remember the comedian Michael Ian Black? Does that name ring a bell?
No, not off the top.
I don't know who that is.
You would know him if you saw him. Anyway, I remember distinctly, he made a post and I responded to him and it went absolutely like insanely viral. He basically implied that he liked Biden more than Bernie. And from the standpoint of, I just think Joe's a nicer guy. Like that's what's
like, that's a good way to vote.
That's important. And I actually responded to him with, Michael, you don't have to worry. You don't make enough money for Bernie's tax plan to ever affect somebody like you. And everybody lost their shit. And even he reacted with, oh, I guess you kind of own me on that one. I'm like, yeah. But that's the problem with the whole cult of feelings. But that's the thing about the cult of personality. You know, Trump is a very unique individual because he has a cult of personality, but he also has a wild card component to his political discourse where you really don't know what you're going to get. And to me, yeah, it makes your vote more powerful.
It does.
Because voting really is, it is a right, but it's also a privilege at the same time. You are making sound decisions for how you want the future to go.
And you're right. And guys, this is very important what Brian was saying. When you are only voting top ballot, and everything below it is something that you don't even know or don't even think of, your vote could easily be causing more damage than not. In fact, that's why ballot initiatives, this is something, generally pass. They generally pass. People generally vote yes. Our tendency is vote yes. And not on the big ones necessarily, but on little ones that people don't think matter, especially municipal things that do matter, and tax things at local things that do matter, and all of those things, school board, all of that stuff that matters. And people don't bother to even look into it.
Yeah.
So you're right. It would, if we separated the elections, a lot of those people would stay out of our state and local races and let the people who know who would be better be. Like, I think that's true.
Well, because in many ways we do vote for our own demise.
Yes.
That does happen.
Because people don't know. They don't do the research. They just vote for, and you're right. And and then it also has it be so dependent on what's happening on the top races as to what is going to happen on the down ballots. It's that's a good idea. I would go with that.
Well, take a look at, you know, when you have a lot of these major metropolitan areas, these urban environments that are, you know, typically impoverished communities and, typically minority communities, whether Black, Hispanic, and these people, you know, the Democrat plantation comes around every 4 years to kind of scoop them up and try and garner those votes. And then what happens from there? They think, okay, well, we got Joe Biden, and what happens? Absolutely nothing. But meanwhile, what they don't realize is that's their local politicians, it's their mayors, it's their town council that's spending and putting money in the wrong places, that's not putting money into education, or that's taking federal money in education to, promote a woke ideology instead of, the fundamentals of, physics and math and science, and instead coming in with, oh, let's make sure we have the pride flag and be all inclusive. And it's really absurd that people don't understand how much their local politics influence them. And perhaps, and look, people give you crap because you say that not everyone should vote. And I don't care. I unapologetically say that.
I disagree.
Well, my goal is for everyone to vote, but I want to educate as many people who are voting as possible. Like, I want people to want to vote. I want people to want to be engaged. I just want those people to know that when you do so ignorantly, you actually could be doing more harm than good. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Now, if everybody would be educated, I'd want everybody to vote. Like, I want everybody's opinion to have weight. Like, that is, but it really needs to be people that have done a little research.
It's like Andrew Yang talking about democracy dollars, that everybody should have the opportunity to be able to make their case on an even playing field. And that, I think, is a huge part of this. When you have all the money in the world, you can control whatever, narrative you want, which is why I've always maintained that if you really want to talk about what improprieties took place during the 2020 presidential election, the people who control the algorithms of our mass media industrial complex made a concerted effort to give as much favorable coverage to Joe Biden as they could and as much negative coverage to Donald Trump as they could. Now, how do you control that? I think we may be past the point of no return when it comes to that type of an industrial complex because of people's dependency on social media 24/7. And then it gets into the whole issue of corporate special interests completely own our government hook, line, and sinker. And I've been saying that for the longest time. When people say that the government doesn't work for us, yeah, there's a reason. Because the people who control the gold control everything now, and they're just fat and high on their own supply all at the same time. And so trying to fix that problem, this is why I think it is important to try to put differences aside on key issues, which a lot of people have a very hard time doing. They get caught up in this idea that because you don't agree on this one specific issue, that you're now persona non grata, it's a non-starter, we can't deal with you. And that to me is a huge part of the problem. We may disagree on, what level the Second Amendment reaches. We may disagree on LGBTQ. We may disagree on whether or not modern monetary theory is feasible within our economic system. But what I think we can agree on are some of the really key issues that are taking us apart at this point. We have a complete, when you talk about how we spend like it's going out of style, I mean, domestically, that's nothing compared to what we're doing when it comes to foreign policy. Our spending on foreign policy is absolutely out of sight, out of mind. And I do want to play this video real quick that I came across the other day because I think that there will be some common. Travers can't help himself. He's just.
Travers.
We have an Irish.
We have an Irish troll. We have a feisty Irish troll.
But somebody that we're big supporters of is Abby Martin and her husband, Mike Preisner. They are both, he's also a veteran and very much against the bullshit within the anti-war, within the pro-war movement that exists in this country. Obviously, they're on the left, but I think that there's a lot of common ground here. So this is an important clip that I just came across the other night, and we'll comment on it.
NATO emerged in the wake of some of the most turbulent events in human history. The world was reeling from a global war. The United States, on the other hand, emerged economically stronger, and after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, shielded by the terrible power of the atom. It moved quickly to apply its newfound power to a project of global hegemony. Preponderant power must be the object of U.S. policy, a State Department memo said in 1947. NATO was a critical piece of that puzzle. Founded in 1949 with the explicit mission of deterring Soviet expansionism and establishing a permanent North American presence on the continent. Through initiatives like Operation Gladio, the United States funded what it called stay-behind operations across the continent, cultivating a clandestine paramilitary network ready to strike at and disable the rising popular movements sweeping Europe. From 1948 onward.
All right. What do you know? I mean, I don't know this, the details of this.
I cannot believe, if I had to place a bet before I came on here of topics that we would not talk about, Gladio would probably have been close to the top of that list. Wow. Operation Gladio has been making a lot of waves over the last few weeks. With the SBUs, the stay behind units, and everything else. And if you haven't dug into Operation Gladio, wow!
Prepare to have this is the first time I'm hearing of what this is. So but I do know that Abby is very thorough. I know that.
So Gladio is essentially a CIA operation, CIA intelligence operation. I don't want to attribute it exclusively to the CIA.
Don't worry, the CIA is already watching Jen, so
it doesn't matter. Go on.
That going on.
They're watching you too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an intelligence operation that is essentially disruptors in certain countries. So in other words, if you look at the Maidan Revolution that took place in 2014, or the Orange Revolution that took place in, I think, 2004, I believe, might have been 2008, in Ukraine, that was a lot of Gladio. If you look at Italy, when they kicked out not kicked out, but they thwarted the communists in Italy, in Hungary, just all over the place. Anytime you see some sort of an uprising and a color revolution taking place, it's like John Bolton said on Jake Tapper. He said, I've never participated in a coup in the United States, but I've done coups around the world. I mean, yeah. And so, I have a woman that's a listener to one of our shows and came on last week to talk about Gladio. And, she's been doing research on this, like ad nauseum, former colonel in the Air Force. And she was telling us, like, when you see like the drug trade, if you go back and look at the relationship between Operation Gladio and Luciano in the mafia up in New York, and you look at the financing apparatus that was used for these stay behind units throughout the world, and all of it comes back to Gladio, the mafia, the drug trade, all of it. It's all funding to continue, this Operation Gladio. If you haven't yet, dive into Gladio, man. That's all I could say.
Wait, you weren't laughing at Abby Martin.
I was laughing because I didn't expect to hear that come up on this podcast at all.
We're very versatile here. We're very versatile.
We'll continue.
The CIA funneled tens of millions of dollars to extremist right-wing groups in Italy alone. These groups were responsible for scores of deadly terrorist attacks that massacred hundreds, many of which were blamed on the left. These, according to a 2000 parliamentary commission in Italy, were part of a strategy of tension that terrorized people into abandoning their loyalties to the rising communist and socialist movements, intended in particular to stop the Italian Communist Party, and to a certain degree also the Italian Socialist Party, from reaching executive power in the country. NATO insists that it's a guarantor of...
So it just facilitates fascism.
Yeah. I don't know about facilitates fascism quite as much as tries to thwart communism.
Well, and socialism. And if you're thwarting the left like that, then something else is coming up. So it's kind of like, this is what's happening. So, I mean, I knew that this was stuff that went on. I just didn't know it had an actual name and written mission.
Yeah.
See, but now you start to get into, an issue of fascism versus communism versus socialism and versus capitalism. You got to throw capitalism in there. When in reality, the conversation that should be heard around Gladio is United States imperialism. That should be the takeaway from Gladio.
For sure.
Okay. Just wanted to throw that out there.
When I hear people that are going out of their way to stifle the populists, well, then you're putting in authoritarianism. You're putting in something to keep that down. And when the corporate mashes with the authoritarianism, there's your fascism.
Brian, you support a nation's right to self-determination, right? If they choose to be, one form of government, then that's their choice.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
Sovereignty above all.
But we don't have to look far back to find its fingerprints in attempts to crush popular aspirations for sovereignty. Fighting for liberation from Portuguese colonialism, the Bissau-Guinean revolutionary Amilcar Cabral described the weapons that flowed into Africa through the alliance, supporting the Salazar regime's wars against the people of Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Cabo Verde. NATO is the USA. We can't let the Soviets clutch victory from the jaws of defeat, George H.W. Bush told Germany's Helmut Kohl in 1990. Later that year, he told France's François Mitterrand that no organization would replace NATO as the guarantor of Western security and stability. In this way, Bush set the stage for NATO expansion, against the so-called ironclad guarantees promised by U.S. Secretary of State James Baker to Soviet Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze in Moscow in 1990 that NATO's forces would not move eastward of the...
Not one
inch. How's that working out?
Not 1 inch. Now we've got 5 NATO allies on Russia's border, and we're about to add. Stoltenberg said we're going to add Ukraine. Hopefully we don't.
Oh God, I can't even.
So you're technically what you think of is on the right, and I'm on the left, and we both agree that we have no place in being there.
Nope, none whatsoever. I am avidly against the war in Ukraine. I'm avidly against the war between Israel and Gaza. I'm avidly against any war, especially when, if you look around at everything that's gone on, it's the United States that has been the instigators behind all of this. You go back to Ukraine with the Maidan Revolution, Victoria Nuland, and Yatsenyuk, over in Ukraine, chasing out not Poroshenko, but Yanukovych, chasing him out, unconstitutionally removing him, trying to assassinate him using your Gladio operatives, trying to assassinate him. If Yanukovych did not decide to take his helicopter instead of his motorcade, he would be dead. And it would have been an assassination, and it would have been at the hands of the CIA. New York Times puts out the article, a couple weeks ago about the SBU and GUR and the CIA involvement over there, which, by the way, is a duplicate of the Washington Post article from October of 2023, both times which came immediately following a vote against sending money to Ukraine, almost as if, somebody in Ukraine is kind of giving a shot over the bow, like, hey, we'll expose what you guys are actually doing over here. Victoria Nuland coming out and talking about the biolabs over there, 46 biolabs in Ukraine, before Rubio shut her up and assured us that it would only be Russians that would ever use bioweapons. Russia has not been a threat to the United States in decades. All right. Wow. Russia spends $75 billion a year on their defense. We spend $750 billion. Well, actually, now it's over $850 billion. We spend more than 10 times what Russia spends on their defense. And we have NATO. We have 31 countries now in NATO. We have 31 allies in NATO all around Russia. And there's this boogeyman in Russia. Russia's going to be able to do something to us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. I'm like, why are we having this thing with them? Are we worried? Are the Russians going to be sending ships on the shores and coming and attacking us? Well, that's the thing. They have 8 military bases or whatever it is. And it's absurd.
But that's also the thing. We'll finish the video in a second. But that's the thing about being a Marine and being in there and understanding that the soldiers don't mean anything. You're just collateral damage. That's all it is. At the end of the day, it's Lockheed Martin, it's General Dynamics, it's Boeing, it's Raytheon, it's any of those mega corporations that stand to profit tens of billions of dollars anytime there's a conflict going on. And someone brought this up the other day. I forget which channel it was, but they basically said, yeah, there's a reason why Biden got us out of Afghanistan in the fashion that he did. It's because it's got to rush into the next fight. We got something else we got to get to now.
They're very busy.
Never ends. Never ends. All right. And this is why. So for those of you who ever wonder how the Ukraine-Russia conflict started.
Right. It didn't come out of nowhere. People love to think that all of a sudden Putin invaded Ukraine.
Because he just felt like it
felt like it one day. We had no knowledge. There was no agreements that were violated, like the Minsk agreements. There was nothing, right? Nothing was there. He just one day decided he's going to conquer Ukraine. And that's the message that they're sort of putting out there. And people that even do the modicum of research know this isn't true.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We overthrew the Ukrainian government, the CIA, Nuland, the Deputy Secretary of State of Political Affairs at the time. We overthrew the duly elected president in Ukraine at that time. What Russia did to counteract that was they took over Crimea. And how did they take over Crimea? A lot of people, we remember the Obama line in the sand and all that, right? No, people in Crimea voted to be annexed from Ukraine. They went to the ballot and they voted. And people will say, well, Russians rig elections. Okay. Well, a year later, Gallup went in there and polled the Crimeans and said, are you guys happier under Russia or Ukraine? 95% of them said they are better off under Russia. They polled them 5 years later and they had the same numbers. And when you go back and look, if you watch, I don't know if you guys watch this or not, but when you watch Tucker Carlson, when he interviewed Putin, one of the things that Putin says in there is, I didn't start this war. Ukraine started this war a long time ago. And if you go back to 2015, 2016, 2017, Ukraine has been shelling their own citizens, which are Russian, typically Russian ethnicities. They've been shelling them this whole time, 20,000 dead before Russia even, began to stage troops in Belgrade. So this has been a long thing coming, and it is, I would say it's probably about 80, 90% America's fault. And I hate saying that because I'm an American, but, I think it was Mark Twain that says a patriot loves his country always, but his government when it deserves it. And our government does not deserve it right now.
No, they've been definitely wrong on Ukraine, but we know there's all sorts of ulterior motives and stuff. And I'll give a shout out to Medea Benjamin's book on Ukraine, because it's actually quite good. It's short and sweet, but it talks the background of what you're talking about. And that's what people don't understand. The parts of Ukraine that Russia seeks to annex are the people that voted to be with them. That's what people are saying. Like, and they've been internally fighting. And from what you're saying, that to me sounds like almost like an ethnic cleansing on the part of Ukraine against the eastern, Russian portion of their citizens. And so that is something that people are not knowing. And I knew there was like conflict there between the Russian, like the people that wanted to be with Russia and the Ukrainians, but it's not so simple as Vladimir Putin just decided one day, I'm going to take over Ukraine. And that's how it's painted here.
All right, let's finish it.
German border. Many of those who then pursue the perilous path to peace are held up at NATO's borders, drowned in the Mediterranean, the world's largest graveyard, or disappeared into concentration camps funded by NATO member states across northern Africa. From the major US post-war military treaties, only NATO remains. SEATO and CENTO are no more. One was disbanded when the US was defeated by the revolutionary forces in Vietnam, and the other after the Iranian Revolution. Yet NATO persists, not least because it's proven its repeated willingness to use overwhelming military violence against its adversaries. Now, having expanded as far east as it can go in Europe, NATO has set its sights on the world. NATO's recent strategic concept referred to Africa and the Middle East as its southern neighborhood. And at its 2023 summit in Vilnius, NATO issued a communique that doubled down on the organization's strategic posture outlined previously. China's stated ambitions challenge NATO's interests, security, and values, necessitating a NATO pivot from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It has become imperative to challenge its violent mission and dismantle the war machine. This is how we prevent World War III.
She's really good.
She's not wrong.
No, she's not.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. So we also agree that NATO should not even exist anymore.
I mean, yes.
Why do we need NATO?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Wow.
What James Baker said, not an inch further to the east, and here we are. That was when I think NATO was 19 countries, and now we're, up well beyond that. And we're on Russia's border. I mean, what would we do if Russia, formed a military alliance with Mexico?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis, just the threat of that. And we were like ready to go to World War III back then. Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. I think that our foreign policy has been pretty shitty. You look at, you really got to dive into Operation Gladio. Anytime you see something
now I'm going to have to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, anytime you see like something like this pop off where, you have, a right versus left sector fighting in a foreign country, especially one that's not necessarily a NATO member, but one that is on the brink of, some sort of a transition, whether it's, maybe like the AfD party in Germany, like they talked about in that video in Italy back in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, it's just Gladio's, it'll open up your mind to a lot of things.
Yeah.
This is what we love our audience and we appreciate them. But this also gets back to this whole idea of,
it didn't start.
Doesn't mean that we support Putin and it doesn't mean that we don't support the Ukrainian people. But you can't, as an American, look at what's going on and quite frankly, take anything as truth from our media industrial complex that has a financial incentive for this to go on for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the look at the COVID era. Look at what they did to us in the COVID era. Now, I mean, your audience might not agree with me here on this, but they came out and told us safe and effective, right? And that if we get it here, I mean, I was just playing a clip the other day of Rachel Maddow saying, if you get the vaccine, it ends with you. Can't go any further. It will not go any further. There's no way it stops with you if you get the vaccine. Turns out that was bullshit. Complete bullshit. Now we've got these died suddenlies popping up all over the place. I do a morning show where I cover, I don't do it as much anymore, but we used to cover these high school teenagers dying from heart attacks playing sports. When the hell do you guys remember that in your lifetime?
Yeah. It's definitely, there's all sorts of weird things happening. I mean, I was always skeptical. We were never proponents. And you and I even talked about this. I don't do bans or mandates. It's just it's just not my thing.
Yeah. And this is also the problem. And again, you don't like my music. Again, you know, we love Brian. We have good people that support the show, but there is this thing called nuance. And most people don't want to have it.
Nobody's saying anti-vax. See, why do you jump to anti-vax?
When you jump, and this is why people don't want to affiliate with the left, because when you jump to that conclusion,
no one said that.
It's like, no, that's not how.
We're pointing out that we were lied to and manipulated for profit, and we're pointing out that there's a lot of reason to be extremely suspicious and skeptical of what Big Brother is telling us.
Again, when you're being told one thing about the COVID vaccine, this is not comparing it to something like the measles or polio. No. This is, again, don't do that.
Unless it offers, unless it's sterility. Unless it offers, look, when it's a vaccine that offers sterility immunity, right? That's a different story, because now that affects other people. And it does matter for kids to not bring things to school that we know can be stopped. We don't want smallpox back. Okay, so there are certain things where vaccines create sterility, and that's another story. But they shoved this down our throats with virtually no real research. They didn't know what they were taught. Clearly, they've changed their minds 300 times. And so what we have now are a bunch of people that are going to be having interesting, long-lasting side effects from something that didn't do what it was supposed to do. And that's really frustrating. Now, yes, it did save some people who were probably immunocompromised. That's true. That's a totally
different conversation.
And that's their choice to do that if that's what they want to do.
If somebody had, and if that would be their choice.
Vaccines are not vaccines. That's just not true. I could call something a vaccine. I could call the flu shot a vaccine, but that doesn't mean I'm making everybody go get it. So you can call things whatever you want to call them. If it doesn't provide sterility, then it's no point. And I don't need to get it to protect you. I need to get it to protect myself. That's my business.
That's why we love Travers, because only Travers can come up with.
It's the big pox.
Yes, big pox. That's what gets you.
Man, I got my smallpox vaccine when I was in the Marine Corps, and you couldn't touch that site for like 3 or 4 days after. They put a Band-Aid on it, and they said, don't take it off, because if you touch it and rub your eye, you'll go blind. I'm like, oh, and you put that in my arm?
Well, yeah, it's not ideal. I appreciate that. But when it's something that ceases the virus to exist and stops it from spreading to other people, then you have an obligation to the collective. When it's something that if you are compromised and you're worried about something can have an effect on you, then that's your choice to get a vaccine. Vaccines are not all vaccines. I can call everything a vaccine. That doesn't make it so.
Yeah. And and this is where it comes full circle, and this is where I think it's important, because obviously we'll have another conversation soon enough. But the reason I'm an advocate for universal single-payer healthcare is because I don't want the for-profit component anywhere near this. This is how we end up in these situations. It's not the government running healthcare; it's our money, if you will. I know that the MMT.
It's our collective resources.
Our collective resources determine that this is how it's going to be. If a doctor has the capability of making $1 million a year because they're good at their job, frankly, they're great at their job, that's their business. Let them do that. I don't need Aetna. I don't need Cigna. I don't need United. They have no reason to exist. They don't add value. In fact, they take value away. And I would like to think that most people are in agreement with that understand that and this isn't, again, this gets back to the whole issue with libertarians economically when it comes to the whole concept of austerity, this idea that we are going to run out of money. No, what we have here is that when we print money, it's basically like a clogged drain. And the only people who actually get through the drain are the rich and powerful for the rich and powerful. And our country is screwed in the process. It's how we have no say over gas prices, eggs, anything. Because the ones who pull the strings will ultimately decide, much like during COVID, we're going to upward transfer of wealth as far as we possibly can.
We do not know this. The vaccines are safer than getting COVID in terms of long-term effect. Okay, so please present me with all of your long-term data, which you can't possibly have because it hasn't been that long. So you can't say that. I know people that have long-term COVID effects, and I know people that have had effects from the vaccine. So you can't say that.
What's this you want us to pull up, Brian?
This is open VAERS. I just want to show the numbers.
Okay.
I mean, the QR code's kind of there, but hold on. Let me see
we can move it.
So
Yeah.
this is mortality. This is reports to VAERS for mortality. You can see this right here is 2021. In 2020, there were 420 deaths. 2019, there were 603. 2021, there were 22,263. 12,446 in 2022. 3,694. And this is just what gets reported. You know, as a writer and a journalist, I had whistleblowers that came out that said doctors won't write the VAERS because it takes you 45 minutes to an hour, and they're disincentivized from doing so because they're not going to get the money that they get if they claim it's a COVID death. And so if somebody died immediately, there was a pharmacist that was administering the vaccine and gave a vaccine to a woman, and they would make you stay and wait 10, 15 minutes to make sure you don't have pass out or anything like that. The lady died right in the office after she took the vaccine. They, came and took her away. The very next day, a journalist goes in there and says, is this safe and effective? Oh yeah, it's safe. It's safe. And he said, what about the woman that died in here yesterday? And the guy's like, oh, we're not going to talk about that. There's more data on here. I mean, hospitalizations are, well, hold on. I know there's a couple that are.
Well, we also have always said you have to consider this. When people died, when the mass COVID was happening and people were dying, if somebody died from whatever they died from, but also happened to test positive for COVID, it counted as a COVID death. And that is also extremely misleading. You can have a heart attack, test positive for COVID, but that doesn't mean you died from COVID. But they counted it as COVID numbers. And we talked about it then, like that was purposefully misleading.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I think that a lot of our followers and obviously our supporters, and we're very appreciative of them. Yeah, it is a conspiracy because we have a for-profit health system.
I don't understand. Yes, they care more about their their shareholders than they do about us. It's not a conspiracy. That's a fact. Big Pharma cares about their shareholders. That's it. End of story. They don't care about us. They'll cover that up like they have. And that's not a conspiracy. That's just following the money trail.
If that was the case, then we wouldn't be in this situation,
right?
The two biggest civil penalties ever paid, I believe, was Pfizer and Glaxo, were the two biggest financial fines, I guess you would call it. I think one was over $2 billion and one was over $5 billion. Don't quote me on that. But, one of the problems and single payer, the only reason I'm not a fan of single payer right now is because I'm in the VA healthcare and it's atrocious. It's horrible.
Well, that needs to be completely revamped, but that isn't government run. That's government run, not just government funded.
Correct.
So that's a little bit right, which we talk about like that. There is a difference.
You need the distinction. It's very important.
And there are ways to look. The reality is, Brian, if we wanted to take care of our veterans, we would be. If we gave a shit to really take care of them, we would. The VA has been a travesty ever. I mean, my husband started doing rotations in the VA when he was in med school. So this was like circa 95. And every time I've ever been in a VA, it's pretty bad.
Yep.
They're pretty bad. Like there's a few exceptions. There's a few decent ones, and then that's it. But mostly they're horrible. And for people to realize that is how we've always treated our veterans. And then we cover it up. So, I don't know whether or not, like, I wouldn't blame it on that system as much as I would blame it on we don't prioritize what we need to prioritize. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't be done.
Yeah. And the one thing. No, go ahead, Britt.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but real quick, before we get into single payer and everything else like that, there's a lot of fundamental things that we do in the United States that nobody else in the world does. First off, our food is absolute shit over here compared to what they eat in Europe and other countries like that. The idea that pharmaceutical companies can advertise directly to their patients, to their customers. I don't want to call them patients, to their customers, without to advertise something that they still have to go to a doctor to get prescribed is absurd. And we're the only first world country in the world that allows pharmaceutical advertisements. We also have the highest cost of prescription drugs because probably because of that. Another big thing is, we have one pharmaceutical rep for every 2 doctors. Another insane. I mean, the amount of money that they're making. I think there was just a documentary or movie TV show called Pain Hustle, I think, that dealt with this, of talking about the the opioid pandemic, which started right down here in Broward County. It started on Oakland Park Boulevard with all those pain clinics.
I know someone who was arrested for that. I know someone who was in on that and actually did some time for that whole
it was disgusting. The other thing that we could do is we could take out incentives for the FDA from having these license agreements where Dr. Fauci made tens of thousands. We don't even know because they redacted how much he made, but where Dr. Fauci made at least tens of thousands, maybe millions, maybe hundreds of thousands off of prescription drugs that they use licensed, chemical concoctions or whatever the hell it is that they're licensing out. But that the Moderna part of that was licensed by the NIAID, and so when you look at all this stuff, like, we just have a broken system with just utter corruption in our government, and it's in the bureaucracy. Congress can't even rein it in. It's gotten so out of control right now.
They're just we're relying on people who are making money hand over fist on insider trading to bring a vote to the floor to stop insider trading. So and that's the case for all of it, right? So that's the problem. It's like we're Sisyphus, but I feel like we're chipping away at it, but you can see it crumbling. Like, you could sort of see it starting to break. And I think, like, when we're talking and we realize how much we have in common, that really shows you that it's not what we've been being told forever, right? Like, because I'm the crazy left that you probably talk about on your show.
Like I said, in 2020, I probably thought that because somebody had told me that you're like hardcore progressive. And then I actually got to talk to you.
Progressive. Why does progressive mean we have to throw away our civil liberties? Like, what does that mean?
See, that's the thing, though, because, like, you guys, and it's just like with my side where they say, either MAGA Republican or hard right or whatever it may be. Yeah. And in reality, most of us are more towards the middle on most issues. We're more libertarian, small L is what I like to call it. But same thing with progressives. When we hear progressive as a conservative, hard right MAGA Republican, we hear, oh yeah, gender ideology and transitioning children in high school and middle school if they come to you and not telling the parents about that, and women competing in sports, transgender women competing against biological women in sports. We hear that. But then on your side, when you hear MAGA Republican, you think we want to ban transgenderism. I couldn't care less, man. As long as you're an adult, you do whatever the hell you want to do.
We can discuss those things, and we can even disagree on those things. But you cannot put all, that's why the terms are so frustrating. When we think of MAGA, people on the left generally think of racist bigots.
Not at all.
Oh, I don't. Again, I know that's not true. And we went to the Trump rally down here. Did you go when it was at the Bank Atlantic or whatever that place is called now?
I did not. No.
Okay, so what year was that? It was 2018. We went to the rally.
Oh, at the BB&T?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was at that one. Yeah.
Okay, so we went to that, and at the time I was collecting signatures to get on the ballot. And anybody can, so it doesn't matter what party you are. So everybody, was supporting that. So we were just there, and we reported immediately. This is not what people think it is. I knew he was going to win because of that. And it's this, because people have this, I would say that maybe 5% of the people there were the people that we think of when I say racist bigots, waving their Dixie flags and what, you know who I'm talking about. But that was such a small minority. Everybody else was just everybody else.
Yep. And it's the same
because I come on here and I appeal to everybody. Everybody supports me because we are making America great again in 24, especially this wonderful person, CannCon. He's a great person, tremendous person.
Because he likes
Make sure you check out his podcast. It's really great. Look at that flag. It's put it on wood. It's
okay,
really,
Brian, look
really
at the little
incredible.
hands.
It's really incredible.
I know, it's epic.
Definitely want to support. He's really great. This person's running again, Debbie Washerwoman Schultze, whoever her name is. She's not good people. You definitely want to vote against. I'm not a big fan of Jen, but I am a big fan of democracy. I'm all about the democratic process. So make sure that you get out there.
Yeah, he doesn't support me.
No, I totally don't, but you can, and you could definitely.
You probably like Carla Spalding.
I totally love Carla. She's a wonderful person. She supports me, and I support her back. That's how it works. So make sure you go to gen2024.org. She's really great, and she's going to do a great job on the Hill.
Right.
And of course, when I come back in the White House, I'm going to need a formidable opponent, and I think she'll be really great. Make America great again in 24. Good to see you.
So ridiculous.
So would you vote for a populist conservative over an establishment Democrat?
Yes. I don't want to. Well, yes, but I don't want to vote for either one.
Just, and that's one of the reasons why I wish we didn't have parties, because the thing is, we know that there is a very fine line between some of the Bernie and the Trump. In fact, many of the Bernie people went over to Trump, and they're still there because of that populist rhetoric. Now, I don't necessarily believe that Trump was genuine about it, but if there were somebody, first of all, I would vote for a non-corporate person over a corporate person, regardless of their ideology. Because somebody who is not bought and paid for means that ultimately they're going to have to answer their constituents or they won't be able to stay there. So for me, again, we talked about this. I don't need to always have my way. If my way is not in the majority, then I don't get my way. I wish more people understood that, like especially when it comes to women's reproductive rights. There are certain things where you are in the minority. Suck it up, Buttercup. So that's just me. But no, absolutely. And I've said it before. I will vote for a non-corporate conservative over a corporate liberal any day. So that, and again, that's just, my take. Like, he loves Thomas Massey. We've talked about that. Like, there's certain people that I feel like if you're in this for the right reasons and to represent your people, then that's what matters.
I respect, and no matter what anybody in the chat thinks, I have one rule and one rule only. I respect and will work with anybody in any corner of the political arena that is not bought and paid for by corporate special interests.
Yes.
That's it. That's my number one rule. Once you get past that, you can pretty much break bread with just about anybody.
Because then they're not working for someone else.
Problem.
Yeah, but how long does that last, though, once you get to DC? That's the hard part, is how long does that...
Well, you have two in the Senate. You got two. You have Bernie and Rand Paul.
Yeah.
That's it. In the Senate, yeah. So, I mean,
and the good news
they've been that way the whole time. So there are people that when they get in that way, stay that way. The reality is most people don't get in that way.
That's true.
Most people only get in corporate.
Are there any, because I know on the conservative side of the house, Massey doesn't take a whole, I don't think Massey takes any corporate money.
He doesn't meet with lobbyists.
No.
So he's a rare, but he's a rare.
And we respect that immensely.
Yeah,
the Democratic Party has a handful. The problem in the Democratic Party is that while they have these anti-war progressive principles on a number of issues, so a lot of them have a lot of regarding civil liberties, they are still afraid to challenge the corporate infrastructure within the party. And that is a huge part of the problem. There's a reason why none of them say a word when Pelosi is making $2 million in stock trades in 30 days. Like, you can't, if you think anyone is going to take your party seriously in terms of wanting to invest in it and vote for it and long-term be involved in it, if you turn a blind eye to that type of criminal activity, and that is criminal activity, there's no way that you could ever build a sustainable future. But maybe that's what needs to happen, because the truth is, I'm starting to feel just the vibe that I'm getting that most people are done with the two.
They're sick of it. They're sick of it. I will say, we know that there are people on the left in Congress that do not take corporate money. There are, but yet they're still scared of the corporate lobbies because they still want to keep their seats and they don't want them coming against them, even though they don't take money from them. So in reality, they're still being run by them. And that is the problem. So we need to stop having that money in our government. Like, I support publicly financed elections. I think that everybody should get, however many months, X amount of days, X amount of public appearances, like we used to do in high school. Remember that? Like, everybody had to have a budget. And then you wouldn't have this at all. And then lobbyists could just be lobbyists and not be corporate whores. They could actually just provide information and lobby on behalf of their people.
Brian, this has obviously been an exceptional conversation. We are on a time crunch. We have a couple things to do before we roll. But how can people obviously find your show if they want to support? And obviously, we appreciate you coming on today.
Sure. Mainly on Rumble, because YouTube doesn't like what I have to say. So you can find me, look up CannCon as it's spelled right down there. I'm also on Badlands Media Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. I do a 2-hour show, morning daily news. You can find me on Twitter at CannCon Actual. And that's pretty much it. All
right. We'll have to hang out again sometime. I think,
sure.
that was really good. And I'll be like keeping you posted on certain events where we might need some protection.
Please do let me know. I told you, I think that I would move towards vote. I would vote for you over, I mean, clearly over Wasserman Schultz. Unfortunately, I don't get that opportunity.
Thanks for that, Brian.
That's a low bar.
That's kind of a low bar.
But I will tell you.
I know. She's awful. She is so awful.
But I will tell you this, Mr. Semper Fi. Jen got her first email today from an IDF soldier. So as far as I'm concerned, she's going to need.
They're going to.
It's going to eventually turn into threats. First, it's debate, and then it's going to be don't let me catch you on the street. So as far as I'm concerned, any of these public events, she's going to need somebody who knows how to. Somebody who knows how to draw the Glock in a half a second.
And that's the thing I tell people on the left. If you don't affiliate with the people on the right, when Armageddon comes, nobody's going to have your back, okay? Nobody's going to give you any food. Nobody's going to help you, okay? That's the thing. You got to have some friends on the right.
Yeah, that's true. Throwing down.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Jen, reach out anytime. Anytime.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate you, sir.
All right. Take care, guys. It was a pleasure.
Anytime.
Bye. He and I are definitely going to have to get together and like have a little powwow.
Yes, and the other thing that people forget when it comes to any of these issues that we talk about, like Teresa says, you know how long it takes to usually perfect the vaccine? Minimum 5 years. Now, I don't think they're working on it still, because I think we have to accept the fact that the powers that be can decide at any moment if they want to do some type or some form of population control. And it's true when it comes to our food. We are not healthy. I don't want racists having my back. Again, if you think Brian is a racist,
he's so not a
get
racist. New
friend. And I think you don't like my music's name is. I'm not going to say something.
It doesn't matter. But that's just why do you strawman everybody? Why do you put that out there? Why would you? What part of any of that conversation would lead you to believe that Brian was racist?
Yeah, that's
like why would you? this is the kind of nonsense we just cannot have. Like, why would you say that? This is someone who shares so much of my mission, and you're making some straw man ridiculous comment. Like, that is so unhelpful, when in fact, he didn't say anything. Do you really think that I would hang out with someone who I found to be a racist or a bigot? Because like that would never happen. That would never happen. I would never want to hang out with someone like that. I certainly would not platform somebody like that. You know what I'm saying? I might go on someone else's platform just to put my word out, but I wouldn't host somebody on here that I thought would have hateful in their heart. That's ridiculous.
Willie, thank you so much. Long live both the goal of free Palestine and long live the Jewish left.
Yes,
I think
you.
You qualify.
Yes,
Double
I do.
K, we really do appreciate you more than you know. It really means.
Did I make that point well?
I think you did.
Okay.
And our friends to the north in Canada have a very strong opinion when it comes to, our form of libertarian conservatism, which is something that doesn't really jive north of the border. And that's okay. We're not the same country. And there are things that Canada has that we're extremely appreciative of.
And again, stop assuming people on the right are racist. So you weren't specifically talking about my guest. You're saying you have to hang out with some people on the right. I am telling you right now that if you are in a whole car full of people on the left versus a people on the right, and that car breaks down,
with the car on the right.
You like.
And if I need to get in a foxhole,
the survivor skill people.
It's not even a question.
This isn't about why would you say racist?
And Angela, if you would say that you would get in a foxhole with a bunch of lefties versus a bunch of righties, then you're kidding yourself. Like, just stop.
Really? So it's like you want to don't straw man people in that way. What I mean about the people on the right, especially the libertarian minded people that are that live, a lot of those people know how to live on their own.
And the one thing I will point out, and I will say this to Andrew, and I say this to anybody else. When we're talking about people that we associate with on the right, we do not associate with religious nutcases.
I don't associate with bigots and racists.
Yeah, well,
what is the religious right? Small government. They don't necessarily believe in a social safety net, and that is something that I work on with a lot of those people.
Now, if you want to see what it actually looks like, and this is a good transition because we're limited on time, but Biden gave his State of the Union last week.
Yeah, there's a lot of guns. That's true, Double K. There's guns.
And they gave there was a response
6 minutes
from U.S. Senator Katie Britt. Don't ask me how this person's a senator, but it is what it is. So you'll see.
I think I might have saw this.
Her response. It's pretty enlightening what happens when people want to make fun of the right. Well, this is easy pickings here.
President Biden's border policies are a disgrace. This crisis is despicable.
Was she coached before she got in front of the camera?
Well, she
'Cause you
is
have
right.
to be
It is
coached.
despicable, and his policies are a disgrace. So far, I agree with her. Keep going.
And the truth is, it is almost entirely preventable. The American family needs to have a tough conversation because the truth is, we're all worried about the future of our nation. The country we know and love seems to be slipping away, and it feels like the next generation will have fewer opportunities and less freedoms than we did. I worry my own children may not even get a shot at living their American dreams. There's no doubt we're at a crossroads, and it doesn't have to be this
Okay,
way.
I think I've seen enough. All right, I think I've seen enough of the Stepford. She's
There
like
is-
a Stepford, like it's out of like a commercial from the 80s. It looks like she's doing a sitcom commercial or something from the 80s, but she's like a Stepford wife.
Like how
But I don't
embarrassing.
disagree with her.
Well, sure, but how does somebody like this get to the U.S. Senate? I think is the question. Like,
Well, what
is it
state
really
is she
just?
from?
Take a guess.
I can't. What guess?
Well, she doesn't sound it, but she's from Alabama.
Oh.
So she's a U.S. senator in Alabama.
And the only reason I say what state is some states have very, very small populations. And so it doesn't really require that many people to vote. Like, for example, like Wyoming.
Well, according to her circumstance, the reason, again, not judging, but her husband is like an Alabama football legend.
Oh, okay. So there it is.
So there is.
So
that
it's the
element.
name.
Don't
Okay.
want to take anything away.
No,
but,
it's
you
the
know,
name. That
well-
name is matters. But yeah, she
We'll
does
play
not
with-
come off like a senator. She comes off like some, like really, like a kind of grade B commercial actor.
You know what the amazing thing is,
Oh,
Kat,
he's
is
horrible.
that Tuberville makes her look great. That's how bad it is in Alabama. So let's
Oh,
finish
God.
this up.
I'll feel it. But here's the good news.
I cannot. This,
We, the people, are still in the driver's seat. We get to decide whether our future will grow brighter or whether we'll
trying to
settle
get us to join a
for
cult.
an America in decline.
she is frightening.
So you have this nice potion that she'll ask you to drink. Here
So
it is.
she's probably some pageant person
Yes.
that he married or whatever. And so she's doing her pageant interview.
Would you like some potion? It'll make you better. It'll make you look like her.
I don't want to look like her.
And remember, she's wearing a cross.
yeah,
so that
Double
must
K is
mean
right.
that
We
she's-
got to stop. We got to
Yes.
stop. We're done. I can't look at her anymore.
So she's really trying to let you know that, you know, her heart's in the right place and she sees you.
She has
and
her cross.
cares
She has her
about you.
cross.
Yes. And
Just in case
what
you
does
were
the green,
concerned.
What does the green represent?
Is she Irish? I don't know.
No, I don't. Well, Katie Britt?
I
Yeah,
don't-
that sounds Irish. So.
Well, not just that. Also, maybe because it was St. Patrick's Day recently. Who the hell knows? I
No,
don't
it
know.
wasn't. St. Patrick's Day is this upcoming Sunday.
Oh, so
And
then
we're gonna
that's
have
why
to do
she's
something.
doing
We're
it.
gonna have to
Okay,
do
so then I
something.
don't even know because I'm not. So that's why maybe she was wearing green. Is for and we're coming up to St. Patrick's Day. There it is. See, I don't even know.
I would say.
I do. I'm really digging the Irish right now, though.
Well, it's something, Robert. It's something about the eyes. You know, the eyes speak, and
Well,
they're
she's-
telling you.
I feel like she looks
Yes.
like she's giving her pageant interview.
Yes. Well, she is
She's
going to
giving a
walk.
pageant
Yeah.
interview, and isn't everything so pleasant? And also very culty. Like, hi, would you take this flower?
I've got one for you.
A little
try it.
creepy.
Well, you know.
Oh, double K, double
We
K.
love you.
We love
You know, there was one of the best Simpsons episodes, and this was from one of the last seasons that was really great. You had green is the color. That's gangrene, you jerk.
No, green is the color of certain fungus.
That's true, but I think that's what he was referencing.
I don't
She- I don't
think
think
so.
she has gangrene.
I don't think so. He was just saying fungus.
Yes, it is. But here's the thing: it's not even so much her words; it's the way that it's delivered. It's like, who in the hell was coaching this person to talk that way? I mean, look, we all
Tony
remember.
Tuberville.
We all remember when Rubio in 2012, and you know, that's the type of stuff. But Double K's right. There is the whole Southern
Oh.
Baptist. Assuming she's a Baptist, I could be wrong. She could be a Protestant, whatever. She's part of the Protestant faith. There is this. It's again this Stepford wife robotic
It's not good.
antebellum type stuff that is it's scary. Like and when you want to talk about
She's like a pod person.
and now I would say to somebody like you don't like my music. Now, if you want to talk about somebody who again I don't know, but the culture is very what you would call bigoted.
Is
That there is an element of that in the antebellum South.
oh yeah, for sure.
That's real.
That's
That's
very
what
real.
I'm saying.
That's
Like,
very real.
That's like, you want to go to that
So-
neighborhood and see who
And
lives there?
people like don't even realize like it's not that long ago. Like my now husband and I
All
were
right, so
driving.
now I have to do this because it's just, all right, you have a thought. Get your,
I'm gonna get my thought out. So my husband and I were driving. This was in, I want to say 1993 or so. And we were driving from here up to Indiana, and we stopped in Macon. And so this is again like
Macon, Georgia.
Macon, Georgia. Yeah. So this is like 93. And my husband walks, I'm in the car and he walks in to see if there's a room. And this was like, it was a chain. It was something like a Best Western or something like that. And he comes back out and he looks like he saw a ghost. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, yeah, we can't stay here. I'm like, why? And he's like, the lady behind the desk was bragging to me that they don't let Black people stay here. And he gets in the car and and my husband, just, you know, he's from Southern California. He like, that is, he never would have, and he was like really like freaked out. So then we ended up, the only other place we could find was a travel lodge, but we ended up getting the last room, which was like the honeymoon suite. We ended up with a heart-shaped bathtub. So it was actually, it was ridiculous. It was so funny. But anyway, that was only in 93.
Well,
so people
keep in
think
mind,
that mentality is so old.
I don't
It
remember
isn't.
well, no, it's not. And I don't remember what year they ultimately changed it. But remember, 1993, the state of Georgia still had the Confederate flag as their state flag.
Yeah.
So that's not an entirely.
Yeah, no, you
that's
should have
not
seen
a- that's not
Jason,
a
like, because
surprising.
you know Jason, like that
Yeah,
was
like
like,
he don't get bothered by anything.
and
This
he
is
like, right.
Like if he's bothered by it, Lord knows it was even
I
worse than
can't even, like, he
possibly
came
imagined.
out, he was like almost shaking. He's like, yeah, no, we can't stay here.
So the Simpsons reference that I was alluding to was the episode "The Joy of Sect," and that came out in like 1997, I want to say. And so it's about the Simpsons joining a cult, and it's
oh my god,
it basically was like Heaven's Gate. It's like they all wore the robes and everything. The leader, ma'am, and they have the eyes, and they can't agree.
is that what you're talking about?
So a sunrise in California, there's nothing like, I would think a sunset.
Also,
in
this one
California.
is interesting too.
We need grumpy. Steve is potentially coming on Thursday. We'll just put that out there now.
We don't, but
We're
don't
working
be
on it.
upset if it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, Steve's got a lot of stuff on his
No,
plate.
Steve is definitely, listen, you want to see two different ends of the spectrum, Andrew. We had Brian today. Steve is entering that territory now where he's like, nah, fuck voting. No, that's not going to sound right.
Yeah,
But
if he lived here, he'd vote for me.
Yes. Well, I think he would. But I think you're going to have that with if somebody like Brian is saying,
Oh,
Jen,
I
I'll
know.
vote
If
for you, I
look,
think that
and I've said it a million times, if we had open primaries here, Debbie would have been gone so long ago. There wouldn't be any need for any of this. Peter and I would have never met. It would have been a whole different trajectory. If we had open primaries, she would have been gone
she's
after
good for
like
one thing.
her first maybe two
Bringing
terms.
all of these people together in such a classy way. All right, last thing before we go.
I really have to go. I
know
have
you got to go. We'll make
appointments.
this clip. So those of you who have been paying attention, stop thinking that our president is going to be doing anything good to
I'm
help
not kidding you. I
anybody.
will stand up and leave on you. I'm letting you all know this. I have an appointment, and I told him I have a hard stop of 3 minutes ago.
What is your red line with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Do you have a red line? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line?
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel.
All
The
right.
defense of Israel is still critical. So there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have.
What in the frick is he talking about? Honestly, you come up with a statement of, well, that's a red, he's like trying to do his Godfather. Oh, it's a red line, but they could do whatever they want. And that is really, we'll play a little bit more of this, but it's just so obvious that it's the wishy-washy shit. It's like people were saying that, well, you think it would be better than Trump? Trump says, well, you know what? At least he's honest about what they're trying to do. You are saying one thing and doing something completely different. And by the way, they're going to invade Rafah.
That port they're building was already in plan long before any of this. It has absolutely nothing to do with getting aid in. In fact, the amount of trucks that they had to bring in to start building the port, if those trucks were actually bringing the aid, you wouldn't need the port for the aid. See, that's the thing. If the trucks can come in to build the port, then why aren't you bringing aid in that way? Because the port has nothing to do with aid.
Before we go, Tony Clifton decided to hop on at the last minute to let you know
Tony.
who our coach probably was Coach Duperville. So there you go.
That's what I thought.
But there's red lines that if he crosses, you cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead. As a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas. It's like.
But they're going to die because there is famine-related disease that has
We've talked about this,
that
like
has
how
covered 1 million people.
they're all
How
going to
many-
die at some point, because how are they not? There's no healthcare, there's no water, there's no electricity. Like what do you think inevitably happens to people in the desert
And
without food?
it's so typical. So apparently, some of the aid packages that were supposed to land on the waterfront the other day, a handful of them didn't open up. 5 people got killed because it landed on them.
And by the way, food drops through. If you look up what any aid organization says, or people who are experts in this, food drops are simply just like a gratuitous stunt. They do not serve anywhere near the level that needs to be served. And I have to go, guys. So Peter will have to finish this up without me. So I will see you guys on Thursday.
All righty, I'll finish the video
You
and
have
then
to. I
I will
have to
close it
go.
out.
I told you.
All right. So I'm going to do a pitch for everybody before we go, but let's finish out this clip here with the President of the United States.
Okay, well, look, the first time I went over, I sat with them and I sat with the work cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made. America made a mistake. We went after bin Laden until we got him, but we shouldn't have gone into Ukraine. I mean, we shouldn't have gone into the whole.
I guess that was a slip of tongue there. You know, that's the problem with war. And it's only going to get worse.
Thing in Iraq and Afghanistan wasn't necessary. Wasn't necessary. And it just caused more problems than it raised, than it cured.
You know, I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect.
You are treating people with disrespect because we have a policy in this country that puts political opportunism on the heads of people that are trying to survive, that are trying to get into this country. Now, one can debate the merits of that and whether that's necessary. But as I will always maintain, the biggest reason we're facing a border crisis is because labor is feeling their oats in this country for the first time in a long time. And the powers that be, the multinational corporations that actually run the country, they have decided that, no, we're just going to open up the floodgates because we want cheap labor, because that is how you maximize profits. And since we have no real labor laws in this country, especially at the federal level, then what the hell's the point? And even if there's laws in place, we'll just break them. And that's what they've been doing. And they want to hone in on this tragedy that happened in Georgia and basically surmise that that's what it's all about. That this person who did come into this country illegally, we can call it what it is. You don't want to call them illegals, whatever. Dehumanizing people is a whole other story, and that's not right. But this young girl who was killed, I believe she was a nursing student, and they're going to hone in on this. So this is one thing that the conservatives do. They hone in on this one thing. They say, you see, this is what happened, and it's all because of Joe. It's his fault. Now, the truth is, none of you want to get this fixed. You don't. You don't want to get it fixed because, again, it's not good for business. That's it. What's good for business is as cheap labor as you can possibly fund. We'll finish it up.
Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
You were caught on a hot mic after your State of the Union address talking to Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Senator Michael Bennet saying, quote, I told him, Bibi, and don't repeat this, but you and I are going to have a come to Jesus meeting. What do you mean by that?
What I meant was, it's an expression used in the southern part of my state, meaning a serious meeting. And it was, I've known Bibi for 50 years, and he knew what I meant by it.
So what's the come to Jesus part? Like what tough love are you going to give to the prime minister?
What's happening is he has a right to defend Israel, a right to continue to pursue Hamas, but he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel by making the rest of the world, it's contrary to what Israel stands for. And I think it's a big mistake. So I want to see a ceasefire.
I think I'm centered now. Am I centered now? Okay, there you go. I think you're seeing an example of what happens once the president is in a position where he has to speak and, you know, is giving these sort of off-the-cuff remarks about what's going to happen. I got to tell you, this timeline we're living in is very, very rough. And when this infighting is happening, and, you know, obviously everybody in the chat has a different opinion about what's going on. Yeah, the working people are always meant to suffer for the desires of the people who control the power structure in this country and around the world. And that's sort of the essence of the whole conversation, because if we're not able to bring people together from all different walks of life in the political arena, then we are heading for a no-win situation. That's why we cross-pollinate with other people that we don't necessarily share the same ideals with. But that's important, because it is an us against them scenario at this point. Working people must come together. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be revolution. But what it does mean is that labor must stand firm. And I can see that these things are conversations that are not easy to have, because I know a lot of people get uncomfortable with them. You know, my attitude is very progressive as much as it is libertarian, in the sense of live and let live, but you better make sure that you're taking care of the least of these. We don't need a situation where people can't survive. And there is too much dehumanizing of people that, frankly, are just trying to survive. It's what's happening in Gaza. It's what's happening in Yemen. It's what's happening at the southern border. And that is, again, I know you think that that's the case. I'm just in a moment of heavy thought, because we are staring down another Trump presidency. And who knows how RFK or potentially Dr. West or Jill Stein or whoever's on the Libertarian Party ticket is going to factor into the election. But we kind of see where things are heading right now. And that's what makes things difficult. But what we do have is the opportunity to make a difference locally, if you want to. And that is why Jen is running for Congress one more time against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And for any of you who are new here, who have potentially been made aware that this campaign is going on, I would ask you, if you look right, there it is, right there. So this QR code gives you the opportunity, if you are, sorry to Travers, sorry to Andrew, you guys are not part of the United States. If you are in the United States, you can contribute to Jen's grassroots campaign by clicking on this QR code, and you can make a contribution today to help the campaign. And that would be tremendously appreciated. Obviously, I'm investing myself into this. Why would I not? The people who need to be compensated are going to be ones who are, you know, we have a campaign manager, we have a finance director, we have a volunteer coordinator, and we have a field director. Now, not all of this is happening all at once, obviously, but over the course of time, we will do what we need to do in order to grow this thing out as exponentially as we can. And contributing to the campaign is going to be huge, but also contributing to the podcast is also tremendously appreciated as well. And we're going to scroll everybody's name down below once again. Remember, if you are looking to contribute to our campaign, but also are outside the United States and believe in the cause, you can become a patron at patreon.com/generational change. You can get the Lulu sticker as an intro gift. We'll have some other things, you know, along the way that we could do. And of course, you see this wonderful, silky smooth tri-blend baseball jersey of Here Comes the Sun. Well, if you contribute $25, you will get yourself one of these bad boys. So that's another way that you can help. Remember, we need to contribute to help our producer and our content creator. I'm not getting any of the money. I'd like to, but it's just not in the cards. More pressing things need to be taken care of. And anything that you guys can do to help our channel is obviously tremendously appreciated, as I mentioned. Yes, Travers, we understand you contribute with your wit and humor, but any and all contributions are obviously very much appreciated. And as far as Thursday is concerned, time has not been determined yet. We are trying to have Steve Grumbine on as our guest. We've been trying to have him on for a little while, especially in light of the State of the Union and all the nonsense that's being spewed regarding our spending and how spending is done. And like I said, when we talk about what happens when we spend money or print money, it is only going into a select few people's hands, hence the inflation, hence the cost of living, everything gets completely convoluted. The concentration of wealth in very few people's hands ends up screwing the greater populace overall. And that is what has been happening for far, far, far too long. And so that will change. We are never AM, Chris. So remember that. We are never AM. That is very important. So don't think that we're going on at that time. We will be on either at, probably not in the afternoon, but again, this is assuming that Steve is up for it. Steve's obviously been dealing with a lot, as you guys know, for those of you who follow Real Progressives. Steve has dealt with, some family sadness recently. But I will say that, and you do bring up a good point. The fight is going to be difficult. Jen is fighting a very uphill battle, and it's going to take a lot of help from a lot of people in order to make this happen. It is, as I said, it's a monumental effort, but it's an effort worth fighting, and I do think Jen could actually pull it off. So anybody who is willing to consider contribution, I'm doing it wrong again, right there, click on that QR code, go to gen2024.org, chip in a little bit, and we're obviously very appreciative of any and all contributions that you'd be willing to make. I'm going to be personally making a contribution just because I believe in this. So I really appreciate each and every one of you that are here. Jimmy Zimzam, like my music, Henry Kajawa, Teresa, Chris Garrett, Travers, of course. Double K, can't say enough good about how much you contribute to our show and obviously to Jen's efforts. Ray J, Randall Giovanetti, Michael Cooper. Who am I forgetting? It wasn't the biggest crowd today, but a lively crowd, an excitable crowd, which is always good. We need that lively communication within the chat. Red Cloud, good to see you. Let's see if anybody else I missed. Robert Pookie Ray, thank you for checking in. The Liberty Lion. Who else? I think that's just about everybody. And if I am forgetting you, please forgive me, but Nelson Ortega, I caught that one. I think that's about it. But yeah, you guys have obviously been great. Your support has been amazing. And this is going to be a very interesting 5.5 months, to say the least. It really is going to be a war of attrition. Chris, we are going to have an non-Act Blue contribution method. It is not up yet, but it will be up very, very soon. So be on the lookout for that. I know a lot of people are going to want to contribute to Jen's efforts if it does not go through the Democratic Party establishment. That is what Act Blue is. There is no getting around that. Obviously, never leave a tip. And I do tip, but not to them. So keep that in mind. And remember to always make sure that you are smashing that like button, sharing, subscribing, do all those things that we ask you to do. We appreciate you all very, very much. And of course, be well, and we'll see you Thursday.